The storm came off Lake Superior without warning, the way the worst things always do. It had been a clear morning when Corporal Ivy Marchetti drove the last stretch of logging road into the bush north of White River, Ontario. By noon, the sky had turned the color of a bruise, and by the time she reached the property, if you could call a half-collapsed gate and a chain-link fence swallowed by spruce trees a property, the first real gusts were bending the treetops sideways. She sat in the truck with the engine running and looked at the gate for a long moment. The file said the woman had not spoken to anyone in 14 months. It did not say what to do if the woman had a dog. Ivy heard the dog before she saw it. A single, low sound, not quite a bark, more like a warning that had learned patience. Then a shape separated itself from the shadows behind the fence. A Belgian Malinois, maybe 5 years old, wearing a worn tactical harness that someone had not bothered to remove. The dog did not lunge. It simply stood and watched her through the chain link with amber eyes that understood things about threat assessment that most people never would. Ivy kept both hands on the steering wheel. She had done a K9 handler course in Petawawa years ago. She knew enough to know she was being evaluated. The file did not mention the dog either. Her supervisor at Veterans Affairs had called it a wellness check, which was the department's way of saying something had gone badly wrong, but no one knew exactly how badly yet. The woman, her name was Sergeant Cora Vail, former Joint Task Force 2, medically released 8 months ago, had missed 3 consecutive appointments, stopped responding to calls, and her last known contact with any human being had been a text message to her sister that read, "I'm fine. Don't come." The sister had come anyway. She'd made it as far as the fence. The dog had made sure of that. Ivy turned off the engine. The wind rocked the truck on its frame. She looked at the dog, and the dog looked at her, and somewhere beyond the wall of spruce trees a light was burning in the window of a house that was barely a house. More a declaration that someone wanted to be left alone. She opened the truck door slowly. The Malinois dropped lower on its haunches. Not aggressive, readying, Ivy crouched down to its level, which was either the right instinct or the last mistake she would ever make. She had driven 4.5 hours to get here. She had not driven 4.5 hours to leave. "Hey," she said quietly. "I'm not here to take anything from her." The dog's ears moved, just slightly. "I just need to know she's okay." Nothing. The amber eyes held her steady. She could see old scars running along the dog's left shoulder, the kind that came from something shrapnel adjacent, or from being in a place where people fired weapons at each other. The harness had a patch on it, faded and fraying at the edges. She couldn't make out the unit designation from where she was kneeling. She stayed down in the mud and the first spitting of sleet and waited. After 3 minutes, she counted. The dog sat down. It didn't move away from the gate, but it sat. Ivy exhaled carefully and stood up. She walked to the gate latch, moved it slowly, kept her eyes on the dog the whole time. The gate swung inward and the Malinois watched her step through, but did not move to block her. It fell in behind her instead, walking at her heel like she was someone it had decided, provisionally, to allow. She had been assessed and, for reasons she did not fully understand, cleared. The house was maybe 40 meters through the trees. What she had taken for a cabin from the road was actually a small wartime-era farmhouse, the kind built in the 40s for families who thought the North Country could be tamed if you were stubborn enough about it. The porch sagged. One window had been patched with plywood. There was a woodpile along the south wall, neatly stacked and very tall, the only evidence that someone here was still planning for the future. Ivy noticed the woodpile and felt something loosen slightly in her chest. She knocked. 3 times, even spaced. Waited. Nothing. She knocked again. "Sergeant Vail. My name is Ivy Marchetti. I'm a transition services officer from Veterans Affairs in Sault Ste. Marie. I'm not here to assess you or report on you. I just drove up from the Sioux because your file landed on my desk and I wanted to meet you in person." She paused. "I know you probably want me to leave. I'm going to stay out here for a while anyway." She sat down on the porch step. The dogs circled once, and then lay down beside the door, facing outward, watching the tree line. The sleet was coming harder now. Ivy pulled her collar up and thought about the thermos of coffee she'd left in the truck. She sat there for 20 minutes. The door opened inward without warning, and Sergeant Cora Vail was standing in the frame, 31 years old, 6 feet tall, wearing wool socks and cargo pants, and a thermal top with a hole at the left cuff. Her hair was dark and cut close. Her eyes were the particular flat grey of someone who had decided some time ago that the world owed her nothing, and she owed the world the same. She looked at Ivy sitting on her porch step. She looked at her dog lying by the door. "You got past Atlas," she said. Her voice was rough from disuse. It was the voice of someone who had not spoken aloud in longer than she remembered. "He let me through the gate," Ivy said. "I didn't do anything. He made up his own mind." Cora stared at her. The wind pulled at both of them. "He's never done that," she said. "I believe you," Ivy said. Something shifted in Cora Vail's face. Not warmth exactly, more like a crack in load-bearing concrete, the kind of fracture that changes the structural integrity of everything around it without making any noise at all. "You'd better come in," she said, "before you freeze." The inside of the house was spare and exact, everything in its place, nothing extra. A wood stove in the corner burning hard, a folding table with a laptop and a stack of maps, a military-issue sleeping bag on a cot in the far corner with the precision of a woman who had not yet allowed herself to own a bed. 2 ceramic mugs hanging from hooks, 1 cast-iron pan on the stovetop. Cora made tea without asking if Ivy wanted any. She moved through the small kitchen the way people move when they have learned, very carefully, how to function in a space that is theirs alone. Every gesture conserved, no wasted motion, no accommodation built in for another person's presence. Atlas came in behind Ivy and went directly to his place near the stove. He lay down with his chin on his paws, tracking Ivy with his eyes, but relaxed in the way that working dogs are when they've made a decision and are at peace with it. "When did you get him?" Ivy asked. Cora set a mug in front of her. He was Sergeant Terrence Holt's dog. She said it like a fact she had memorized for a report. "Terrence and I served together, 2 rotations in Mali, 1 in Latvia. Atlas was his." She sat down across the small table. "Terrence died in a training accident at Garrison Petawawa 14 months ago. Atlas had no next of kin listed. I took him. That was the right thing to do," Ivy said. "It wasn't about right," Cora said. "Atlas needed a person. I needed." She stopped. She wrapped both hands around her mug. "He needed a person." Ivy did not push on the unfinished sentence. She had learned in 7 years of this work that the sentence people don't finish is usually the most important one, and the worst thing you can do is try to complete it for them. "The harness," Ivy said instead. Cora looked at her. "What about it?" "It's Terrence's kit." A pause. "Yes, you haven't taken it off him." Cora was quiet for a moment. Outside, the sleet was graduating into something that might have been snow. "He gets anxious without it," she said. "We both figured that out early. He'd been wearing it since his first deployment. It's his, it's how he understands himself." She looked down at her mug. "Some things you can't just take off a person because it's more convenient for everyone else." Ivy looked at her across the table and thought, "There it is." "How long has it been since you slept?" she asked. Cora blinked. It was the question she hadn't been expecting, which was exactly why Ivy had asked it. "I sleep. How long at a stretch? 2, 3 hours every night. Most." Ivy wrapped her own hands around the mug. "And the nightmares." The silence that followed was not hostile. It was the silence of someone who had been asked the right question for the first time in a very long while and did not know what shape the answer was going to be when it came out. "How did you find this place?" Cora asked instead. "Your file, and your sister, when she called the office. Mira called. She's worried about you. She doesn't need to be." "Cora." Ivy said her name directly, without decoration, the way you say the name of someone you're not willing to lose to bureaucratic distance. You're living alone in the bush an hour and a half from the nearest town. You haven't spoken to anyone voluntarily since November. Your sister drove up here, and you sent her home with a dog." She paused. "I'm not judging any of those choices, but I need to know you're safe." Cora set down her mug very precisely on the ring it had left on the table. "I am safe," she said. "This is the safest I've been in 3 years. Safe from outside things," Ivy said. "What about from inside?" The crack in the load-bearing concrete went a fraction deeper. Cora looked at the window. The sleet was definitely snow now, coming sideways. "I'm not going to hurt myself," she said. The flatness in her voice had changed register. It was still quiet, but something in it had become, not soft exactly, more like exhausted. I don't know how to be around people anymore. I don't know how to. Everything's too loud and too close, and everyone wants something from me that I don't have left to give." She stopped, started again. "After Terrence, I needed it to be quiet." "And is it quiet?" Cora looked at Atlas by the stove. He looked back at her with his amber eyes. "He's enough," she said. "He's enough company. He's wonderful," Ivy said and meant it. I could feel him assessing me at the gate. For the first time, something crossed Cora Vail's face that was almost a smile. "He's the best judge of character I've ever known," she said. "Better than me, even. I trusted people I shouldn't have. He never made that mistake." She looked at Atlas again, and the near smile became something more complicated. "He knew something was wrong with Terrence's unit before I did. Weeks before the accident. He was restless, wouldn't eat right, kept. I used to joke that he was like a weather barometer. Could feel pressure changes that hadn't registered anywhere yet." She stopped. The complication deepened. I didn't listen carefully enough. There it was again. The sentence that wasn't finished. Ivy waited. "I was supposed to be there that day," Cora said. "It came out the way something comes out when it has been held underwater for a long time. I had a physio appointment in Ottawa. I'd been having issues with my shoulder. I was shot in Bamako, back in my second rotation. It was fine, but it takes a long time to. Anyway, Terrence covered for me. He took my spot on the exercise." She looked at her hands. "He took my spot, and the equipment failed, and I was sitting in a physio waiting room in Ottawa, reading a magazine about gardens when my phone rang. The fire in the stove shifted. Snow hit the window." "Cora," Ivy said quietly, "what happened to Terrence was not your fault." "I know that," Cora said. "Logically, I know that." She pressed her thumb along the rim of her mug. "There's a version of knowing something that lives up here." She touched her temple. "And there's the version that gets all the way down." She touched her sternum. "The second version takes longer. I'm still working on it." Ivy nodded. She did not rush to fill the silence. "Mira thinks I'm broken," Cora said. "Mira loves you and doesn't know what to do with that love right now." She kept calling it PTSD, like naming it is the same as fixing it. "It's not," Ivy said. "But naming it is the beginning of being able to talk about it without it running everything." Cora looked at her directly for the first time since they'd sat down. A long, assessing look, the same kind Atlas had given her at the gate, Ivy realized. The same quality of attention, the same willingness to make a decision and stand by it. "You've done this before," Cora said. "Talk to people like me. For 7 years. Are most of them okay?" Eventually, Ivy thought about the honest answer and gave it. "Most of them. Not all. The ones who make it through are usually the ones who let one person in, just one, to start." She met Cora's eyes. "It doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't have to be family. It just has to be someone." Cora looked back at Atlas. He was watching both of them now with equal steadiness, his chin still on his paws, his amber eyes moving between them like he was following the conversation and approving of its direction. "He let you in," Cora said slowly. "At the gate. He did. He's never." She shook her head. "He attacked my sister's boyfriend." He barked Mira herself back to her car. "The grocery delivery person has been leaving things at the end of the road since March." She looked at Ivy with something that might have been bewilderment. "Why you?" Ivy thought about it honestly. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe he could tell I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just trying to show up." The storm settled in for the night and Ivy stayed because the logging road was impassable, and because Cora, somewhat to her own evident surprise, seemed willing to have her. They ate soup from a can and sliced bread, and did not talk about the military or about Terrence or about the 14 months. They talked instead about the lake. Cora had kayaked Superior the summer before she enlisted, solo, from Thunder Bay to Wawa, and about Atlas, who had, apparently, a previously unknown fondness for blueberries that had become apparent during the previous August, when he discovered the patch behind the woodshed and ate himself into a state of purple-mouthed indignity. Cora showed her, on her phone, a photograph of Atlas sitting in the middle of the blueberry patch, with the expression of a dog who had made one decision that he did not regret at all. Ivy laughed out loud. It was a genuine laugh, not a social one, and it bounced off the walls of the small house and surprised them both. Cora looked at the sound of it like she was trying to remember what it meant. Then, very carefully, she laughed too. It was rusty and brief, but it was real. Atlas lifted his head from his paws and looked at Cora with his ears forward, like he was checking that the sound had come from where he thought it had, like he wanted to be sure. "He hasn't heard that in a while," Cora said, quieter. "Which part?" Ivy asked. Me laughing. She looked at the dog, and the expression on her face was the most undefended thing Ivy had seen from her all evening. Raw and certain, and a little frightened of itself. "He keeps an eye on me, every day, every hour. Since Terrence, he just watches me like he's trying to decide whether I'm going to be all right or not." She scratched the dog's ear. "I think I've been scaring him." Atlas leaned into her hand. "You've been scaring yourself," Ivy said. "And you've been doing it alone." Cora said nothing. Her hand moved on the dog's ear, and he closed his eyes, and both of them, the woman and the dog, seemed for a moment to exhale something they had been carrying for a very long time. At some point, before midnight, Cora asked if Ivy had done this before. Not the job, not the wellness checks. She meant the thing underneath all of that, the showing up without armor, without a clipboard, without the distance that the job description usually provided. Ivy told her about her brother. His name was Danny. He'd been an infantry section commander with the Royal Canadian Regiment, 2 tours in Afghanistan. He'd come back the second time, not quite the same person who'd gone. It had taken 3 years and a lot of failed interventions, and one person, a stranger, a man Danny had met at a hardware store in Petawawa, who turned out to be a retired major with the same look in his eyes, to find his way back to something livable. Danny lived in Fredericton now. He coached minor hockey. He was good. But it took that one person, Ivy said. The stranger in the hardware store. He showed up without trying to fix anything. He just kept showing up. Cora was quiet for a long time after that. Outside, the snow had stopped, and the temperature had dropped, and the world beyond the window was very still and very white. "Terrence used to say that the best thing Atlas ever taught him was how to be present," she said. "He said dogs don't have the capacity for the particular torture of living 6 months behind, or 6 months ahead. They just live exactly where they are." She looked at Atlas, who had moved from the stove and was now lying with his head on Cora's foot. "I thought that was something you either had or didn't. I didn't know it was something you could learn." "It is," Ivy said. "It takes practice. It takes help. I'm not good at help, I know." Ivy smiled slightly. "You let me through the fence anyway. That was Atlas. He's yours. You shaped him. Whatever he decided about me, he decided with the judgment you gave him." Ivy looked at the dog, the harness, the old scar along his shoulder. "You're not as closed off as you think you are, Cora. You've just been trying to protect the parts of yourself that are still working." Cora did not answer, but she did not look away either. Morning came sharp and silver and unbelievably bright, the way mornings come after new snow in northern Ontario when the sun returns and the whole world is briefly impossible. Ivy found Cora already up, already at the woodstove, already, and this was the thing that caught her, talking quietly to Atlas while she fed more wood into the fire. Not commands, just talking. the low, continuous murmur of someone keeping themselves company in the only way they'd allowed themselves for a year. Ivy hung back in the doorway and let it go on. She listened to the tone of it without trying to parse the words. It was the voice Cora used when she wasn't performing anything for anyone. It was softer than anything she'd heard from her the night before. Atlas looked up and saw Ivy and thumped his tail against the floor twice. Cora turned, caught herself. The soldier's neutrality came back, but slower than before, like a coat she'd put on in a hurry when she used to put it on before she even thought about it. "Coffee," she said, and turned back to the stove. "You drive back okay in this? The road will be fine by afternoon." Ivy came fully into the kitchen. "I'd like to come back. Not as a check-in, not as an official visit. I'd like to come back because I'd like to know how you're doing." Cora poured coffee into one of the 2 ceramic mugs, handed it over. She was quiet for longer than was comfortable, and Ivy let it be uncomfortable, because some things need space to be what they are. "I don't know how to do this," Cora said finally. "You don't have to know how. You just have to not say no. That's a very low bar. It's the bar we start with." Cora looked at her. Then, with the particular care of someone who had not made many voluntary decisions in a long time, she nodded once. "Small." Atlas got up from the floor and walked over to Ivy and sat down next to her and looked at Cora as if to say, "I already told you, this one is fine." Cora watched him. The near smile came back, less near this time, more actual, still fragile but present. "He voted before I did," she said. "He usually does," Ivy said. "From what you've told me, Terrence always said he was the smartest one in any room." Her voice changed on Terrence's name. The weight was still there, but it was different weight than the night before. Less something that was crushing her, more something she was choosing to carry. The beginning of a distinction that made all the difference. He was right. She looked at the dog sitting next to Ivy, the 2 of them at ease with each other in the morning light of her small kitchen, and something happened on her face that Ivy would think about later on the drive back south. Something that was not quite hope, not yet, but was the physical precondition of it, the thaw before the green, the exhale before the first real breath. "Same time next week?" Ivy asked. Cora Vail looked at her for a long moment, looked at Atlas, looked back. "Bring better coffee," she said. "The stuff you brought in that thermos was terrible." Ivy laughed, and Cora almost did, and Atlas thumped his tail against the floor 3 times in the morning light, because he had known from the first moment at the gate that this was how it was going to go, and he had been waiting with the particular patience of a dog who has decided to trust for the rest of them to catch up.